In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the Lich is described as an almost universally evil form of undead spellcaster of great power, typically the final stage or ultimate goal for a necromancer. They were known for their immense power and unwavering intellect, as only the most powerful and cunning of spellcasters were even able to attempt the transformation into such a creature. Lichdom was often seen as the ultimate form of undeath, wherein the spellcaster embracing undeath was able to retain their mind and power while gaining the benefits of immortality. They were often skeletal or rotting, depending on how long it had been since their transformation, with their physical form eventually withering away to bones animated solely by their own magical powers. The standard Lich has an AC of 17 and 135 hit points, with a speed of 30 feet. They have a 0 in strength, a +3 in dex, a +3 in con, a +5 in int, a +2 in wisdom, and a +3 in charisma. They have a +10 to constitution saves, a +12 to intellect saves, and a +9 to wisdom saves, making saves against magic much easier. They have a +19 to arcana checks, a +12 to history checks, and a +9 to insight and perception checks, making lying to a Lich very difficult. They're resistant to cold, lightning, and necrotic damage, and are completely immune to poison damage and any damage from non-magical weapons. They're completely immune to being charmed, exhausted, frightened, paralyzed, or poisoned, and they have true sight up to 120 feet and a passive perception of 19, making stealth through magical or traditional means incredibly difficult. The Lich has 3 legendary resistances, allowing them to succeed on failed saves 3 times per day. They have the rejuvenation trait that allows a destroyed Lich to gain a new material form within 1d10 days, regaining all of their hit points and manifesting within 5 feet of their phylactery. They're innate spellcasters with a spell save of 20 and a +12 to hit. They have the cantrips Mage Hand, Prestidigitation, and Ray of Frost. They have 4 level 1 spell slots and the following spells: Detect Magic, Magic Missile, Shield, and Thunderwave. They have 3 level 2 spell slots and the spells Acid Arrow, Detect Thoughts, Invisibility, and Mirror Image. They have 3 level 3 spell slots and the spells Animate Dead, Counterspell, Dispel Magic, and Fireball. They have 3 level 4 spell slots and the spells Blight and Dimension Door. They have 3 level 5 spell slots and the spells Cloud Kill and Scrying. They have 1 level 6 spell slot and the spells Disintegrate and Globe of Invulnerability. They have 1 level 7 spell slot and the spells Finger of Death and Plane Shift. They have 1 level 8 spell slot and the spells Dominate Monster and Power Word Stun. And finally, they have 1 level 9 spell slot and the spell Power Word Kill. The Lich also has advantages on all saving throws against any effect that turns undead. They have a physical attack as well called Paralyzing Touch, which has a +12 to hit, dealing 3d6 cold damage, a range of 3 to 18, forcing a DC 18 Constitution save. On a failure, the target is paralyzed for 1 minute or until they succeed on a saving throw, which they can repeat at the end of their turn. The Lich also has 3 legendary actions per round, refreshing at the start of their turn. For 1 legendary action, they can cast one of their cantrips for free. For 2 legendary actions, they can cast either Paralyzing Touch or Frightening Gaze, wherein they target 1 creature within 10 feet and impose a DC 18 Wisdom save. If failed, the target is frightened of the Lich for 1 minute. The target can then repeat this save at the end of their turn, and a success makes them immune for 24 hours. Finally, the Lich can use all 3 legendary actions to disrupt life, causing non-undead creatures within 20 foot of the Lich to make a DC 19 con save, taking 66 necrotic damage on a failure, a potential of 6 to 36, or half as much on a success. The Lich has lair actions provided that they are in their chosen domain. On initiative count 20, losing ties, the lair can take one of the following effects, but they cannot use the same effect 2 rounds in a row. The Lich can roll a d8 and regain 1 spell slot of that level or lower, but if they haven't spent any applicable spell slots, this effect does nothing. The Lich can instead target 1 creature within 30 feet and tether themselves to that creature. Whenever the Lich takes damage, that target must roll a DC 18 con save or else take half of the damage themselves, sparing the Lich half of the overall damage. Finally, the Lich can call forth the spirits linked to its lair, which then attack 1 creature within 60 feet. They must make a DC 18 con save or else take 16d6 necrotic damage, a potential of 15 to 90, or half as much on a success. As a DM, I would almost always have a Lich fighting in its lair. They are incredibly intelligent creatures by nature, and they wouldn't be fighting a party of powerful adventurers unless they had the home field advantage, or were somehow tricked or forced into a fight away from home. Combat with a Lich is a lot of fun, and a huge challenge for both the DM and the players. With so many options to choose from for the DM, and a near limitless amount of resources on high-level players, a lot of the combat is going to be incredibly situational, but here is how I would approach DMing a Lich in general. First off, the lair actions. On the first lair action turn, I would use the tether and tie it to a spellcaster, specifically their healer if identified, as they're likelier to fail constitution saves. After hitting the Lich once or twice, your players will likely gather that doing so is horribly harming their healer, and they might decide to back off for the remainder of the round. For the second round of lair actions, I would use the spirit attack against a melee player. Even though tankier players are likely to succeed on a con save, even half of the damage from this lair action could be devastating. I would swap between these two lair actions each round, only using the spell slot refresh once the Lich has used a minimum of 2 or 3 spells, or use their level 8 spell slot, as using this lair action is useless if they haven't cast spells. Second, the legendary actions. For the most part, the legendary actions are pretty straightforward. While the Disrupt Life action is the highest damage, it only affects those within 20 feet of the Lich, which are all going to be the Constitution-heavy tanks and melee fighters. Range players are going to position themselves far away from the Lich, so I would use this when players are still bunched up together close to the Lich, and then would likely ignore it going forward, instead casting the cantrip Ray of Frost 3 times per round. The Paralyzing Touch is great to use on melee players who manage to get a little too close for comfort, such as a Paladin. Using this can prevent holy damage from an annoying warrior or stop someone from chasing the Lich when he's fleeing. The Frightening Gaze is, in my opinion, the least helpful of the 3, as it can only be used on people within 10 feet, and most within that range will probably be within melee range already. And while disadvantage on the strike helps the Lich a little bit, they're still likely to hit an AC of 17 at endgame levels. Next, I'm gonna break down the general use of spells and spell slots from lowest to highest. For the cantrips, the only one that really applies to combat is Ray of Frost, and would be used as part of the legendary actions and not a main spell cast unless the Lich is completely out of spell slots. For level 1 spells, I would hold onto these spell slots pretty much only for shield. Increasing a Lich's AC to 22 for a whole round is an amazing way to prevent melee from damaging them, and is in my opinion way more effective than using Frightening Gaze for the same purpose. The other spells are decent, but only really do things effectively when amped up to higher spell slots. For level 2, I would use these slots mainly for Mirror Image or Invisibility, which are both concentration. Mirror Image further decreases the chance of being hit by melee and spell attacks, and with this plus shield, and a general high resistance to magic saving throws, makes the Lich incredibly hard to hit. For level 3, I would hold on to this slot exclusively for Fireball and Counterspell, with a special attention to Counterspell. Casting Counterspell at higher levels helps automatically end higher level spells, but it doesn't aid in the ability check portion of this spell. With a +5 to the check, the Lich needs to roll a 14 on a level 9 spell or lower for lower spell slots, and at this point I would just upcast the Counterspell to level 9 to avoid such a thing. For all other spells cast against the Lich, casting Counterspell at level 3 is usually sufficient. For level 4, I would use this slot level for a Dimension Door to get away from powerful melee, or to upcast Fireball. Blight deals 8d8 damage, a potential of 8 to 64, but a level 4 Fireball deals 9d6, a potential of 9 to 54, but has a much higher range and the ability to hit multiple people at a time, giving it the ability to nuke ranged players and melee alike. For level 5, the only options here are Cloud Kill or upcasting spells like Fireball or Magic Missile. In my opinion, Cloud Kill is incredibly overrated, as your Lich will likely be concentrating on Mirror Image already, and dropping that for Cloud Kill is a dangerous trade-off. But upcasting a damaging spell is a much easier and, in my opinion, better choice. For level 6 spell slots, I would use it primarily for Globe of Invulnerability, and if the Lich gets the spell slot back, I would then use it to cast Disintegrate to deal massive damage. For level 7, I would use it primarily for Finger of Death, as the damage is astronomical, and Plane Shift is really only useful for fleeing, something I feel a Lich would not do if comfortably in their lair, or if out in the field, as they know that a death outside their lair leads them to being revived via Phylactery. For level 8, I'm going to shock longtime viewers and not use Dominate Monster. I know, I love turning tanks on their parties, but to do so with precision takes up the Lich's action, which is better spent dealing damage via spells. Instead, I would use Power Word Stun on the most troublesome player, usually a healer or a paladin, and then nuke them with a high-level Fireball or other dex save spell that they will automatically fail. And finally, for level 9, there's literally only one good option. Say it with me. Power Word Kill. This is arguably one of the best defensive spells in D&D, and it can be used to devastating effect. I would wait on this one for a few rounds, allowing players to use up their resources, especially Counterspell, while getting weaker all the while. Once you're pretty sure that enough damage has been dealt, and that all spellcasters have used their counterspells or their reactions for that round, I would target a troublesome player with this spell. Most player characters at levels 18 to 20 will have around 180 to 200 HP, except for the casters, who have on average 165. 25. After 2 or 3 rounds without healing, at least one of the casters will be in the danger zone, and it's up to you to metaphorically roll the dice on which one is a cast away from being instantly dead. In general, my strategy for a Lich encounter is deceptively simple to run, regardless of the changing strategies from players. I would position the Lich in a way so as to make it difficult to get to, like at the top of a spire or a raised platform. I would then cast Globe of Invulnerability on its first turn, and the Tether Lair action on a healer in the first round. Then, I would invite the melee players to attack. When they do so, they will be weakening their own healer. Meanwhile, ranged spellcasters are rendered utterly useless by the globe. On the next round, I would use the spirit attack on the most powerful melee player, and cast Mirror Image if the globe or their healer is down. From here, I would respond to player attacks with spells and abilities as appropriate, saving spells like Shield for melee attacks, and counterspells for big spells like Resurrection, Mass Heal, and so on. Spells like these could turn the combat back into the party's favor, which is something the Lich does not want. Following the general strategies for each spell slot and adapting to player strategy itself allows you to run a Lich as a deadly, unwavering monster of Arcana, because it is. In mythology, the Lich is an early staple of sword and sorcery fiction. One of the oldest depictions of the Lich as we know them is in Ambrose Bierce's 1893 The Death of Halpin Fraser, in which it refers to the spirit of a dead ancestor who possesses a living body. Other fiction in the late 1800s and early 1900s uses the term as well to refer to sorcerers and magic users who give up their souls to become undead wizards with immense power, usually linked to devil worship or the worship of dark deities. Later adaptations added the use of items like soul gems, phylacteries, or horcruxes as storage items for the Lich's souls, further distinguishing them from other undead entities, and adding the stipulation that this item must be destroyed before the Lich can be killed. And yes, technically Voldemort is a Lich, and that is a hill I will gladly die on. The actual term Lich refers to an archaic English word for corpse, and was used in Old English slang to refer to the gate at the lowest end of a cemetery, the place where coffins of funerary processions typically entered the graveyard. This was referred to as a Lich Gate, and the association with a gate literally leading to dead bodies, plus works like Clark Ashton Smith's The Empire of the Necromancers in 1932, further tied the term Lich to dead bodies, raising the undead, and the undead warlocks and wizards who control them. In comparing the monster to the myths of undead sorcerers, we find that the monster is an amazing representation. Liches in almost all fantasy and myth are depicted as ruthless magic users willing to sacrifice their humanity and souls to gain power, and the Lich in D&D does the same with a cold, calculating malice, matched only by their ability to kill all who stand in their way. If you enjoyed that video, please leave a like and comment below, and consider subscribing to the channel. You can also join the Patreon for $1 a month, link in the description below, to access videos days before they're posted here, as well as other exclusive stuff like short stories, videos, and more. For all of my other content, you can find me on Twitch at Moglaroo, YouTube and TikTok at Moglaroo Streams, or my website, mwjgilmore.com.